Jack just absolutely loves bugs, dinosaurs, and anything like that. But Lily loves girly things, but she also loves doing everything with Jack, bugs. They're like best friends, not just brother and sister. And Jack just absolutely loves bugs, dinosaurs, and anything like that. But Lily loves girly things, but she also loves doing everything with Jack, bugs. They're like best friends, not just brother and sister.
Still, if anyone knows anything.
If anybody knows anything, just come forward as soon as possible. 2 little kids are still out there. I want to find them. That's really all I can do. Post any officers they can get at the New Brunswick border, PI border, and get them at every airport possible. Anybody who has any information, or you think you've seen something, or hear something, or any messages from friends about hearing something, just contact your local police services. Anything, guys, anything. Your focus outward around Malaya and toward the kids. Don't attack Malaya, because her mental health is, it's going to be reflected on her daughter. So I don't want anyone attacking Malaya anymore. I urge the public to come out if you have anything, come out as fast as possible and get it to any detachment or any police service that you have available to talk to.
Is there something that you think the public doesn't know that you can share, that you want the public to know?
That's a hard one, because I don't want to impede the investigation in any way. It is still a missing persons investigation. It hasn't pivoted to any type of criminal investigation. But the kids were seen the day before. I know a lot of people didn't know that. I still see a lot of stuff online that the kids could have been missing for days. They were out of school for days, and they were seen in the Glasgow area on camera the day before this appearance in the afternoon.
Where was that?
I don't know if I can say that, but it was near the Highland Square Mall.
Was it with you?
It was with me, Malaya, and Meadow, and Lilly and Jack were there too.
And are the police aware of that?
The police were aware of that since.
Do they have that video?
Yes, they do. I also talked to my coworker in the parking lot as well, and he verified that with investigators as well. So, for all the speculation, they were gone days ahead of time, or they were seen the afternoon on camera before the disappearance.
Welcome in, everyone. Just a few things that I wanted to go over there with those really, really old clips, because, well, they're things I discussed in yesterday's live stream. So, and I'll talk to them in a minute. So, welcome in, everyone. Good to see you in here, Shelley. Welcome in for your first live. So, we spoke about in yesterday's live stream, Charmaine had said to Daniel that she didn't think it was really a big deal that he was using past tense. Well, maybe a year on, you could let it go. Maybe a year on, you could say, okay, they've reached an acceptance that the children are not alive, especially after Rob McCammon came out quite clearly in that most recent press conference. But that was him in the first week after the children went missing, saying Lily loved bugs. He was talking in the past tense, less than a week after the children went missing. That is not normal. That is a red flag. So I did want to point that out. And the other thing was, and I'm going to replay that bit of audio, I think I've got it queued to replay, him saying, oh, at the end of every interview, I've made a plea for people to come forward. So I wanted to play what he did say in those early days and show where he had to be prompted by the reporter. Oh, the message is still? And Daniel's like, oh, yeah. Because apparently Daniel forgets these things. You have a disturbing question for if the kids are found. Yes, the coroner could determine cause of death if there's any trauma showing in the bones. They won't find much else unless they've been dumb enough to do what Dee Warner's husband did, where he sealed her in a tank, pretty much preserving evidence and essentially mummifying her. But I don't think that's going to be the case that we're going to see here with Lily and Jack. Toxicology could be an issue. If the children got into something, then in terms of toxicology, I don't think they would be able to do toxicology at this date. If they're found with their belongings and things, it's going to come down to what sort of story their bones can tell. One thing that will show is there was a question that was made of Daniel in this same interview with Charmaine, this live stream, about did they give the children melatonin or anything to help them sleep? If, as an ongoing thing, as a regular thing, the children were given anything to make them sleep, I would imagine that, and this is not a pleasant subject to talk about, but it's something that's worth talking about. They can test hair, so they will be able to recover hair, and they could test strands of hair for presence of any sort of rugs. But as for anything else, mostly they're going to be looking for trauma on bones, because that's all they're going to find. Yes, they can test. I forgot about pull-ups. That is such a good point, Blue Bears. Yes, they can test pull-ups. Although even then, you're looking at things that have quite possibly degraded. But that is a brilliant way of preserving evidence. If the children were given anything, then Jack's pull-up could be crucial evidence if they can recover it. Unfortunately, if it's if we're talking about a shallow grave that's been disturbed, which doesn't seem like it'd be the case because we would know by now, then it's possible that, you know, things like the underwear and the pull-ups might not be found. But, you know, things like the boots, if their boots are with them, they can test the soil underneath the boots, and that will prove that they didn't get there of their own accord. because they would be able to show that the soil under the boots matches perhaps possibly an area on the property. Teeth, more so for getting DNA. Yeah, toenails and fingernails. The thing with finding DNA under fingernails is that you still need flesh under the fingernails to preserve that DNA. So when we're talking skeletal remains, and I know this is a horrible topic, a lot of evidence will be lost. Yeah, I hope that the boots weren't burnt. I actually don't think the boots were burnt. But the dog handler asking about that wood stove thing in the house does make me wonder if something was burned, if evidence was burned, and that concerns me. But look, at the end of the day, I truly believe that they're going to have enough circumstantial evidence. Even if they can't find Lily and Jack, and I really hope they do find them, but even if, let's say, we have a nobody case, I think, given how confident Rob McCammon was in that last press conference, I think that they probably already have a rock-solid case. I think they probably have enough circumstantial evidence to build a case. If ingested chemical with parts per million of substance show under analysis if they breathed narcotic fumes, side stream smoke, would that show? Quite likely it would show in strands of hair. In bones, not so much, I don't think. The Suzanne Morphew case, and Barry's going to be in trial soon, that case, her bones actually did give up information in terms of a sedative, because he had actually shot her with a dart, a sedative dart that is normally used on deer, and it had actually pierced the bone. And when they did the autopsy, the medical examiner was actually able to find traces of a particular sedative in her bones in this location where it was clear that it had been pierced by a dart. And this is going to be the thing that is going to seal the case, in my opinion, because the particular compound that is found in that sedative is not one that is just a buy over the counter thing. You have to actually have a license or something to get it. And it is used by your parks and wildlife people in the area. But the only civilian who had a permit for that particular mix of chemicals was Barry Morphew. So in that instance, yeah, you can find stuff like that in the bones. But in terms of ingesting anything, that's when you're really going to be hoping for body tissue. I've heard that you can overdose on melatonin. I believe that's something that has been put out as a warning, and that it's actually not advised for children. And I also wonder, given that they went to the tobacco store or whatever that day, I also wonder about maybe gummies or anything. Yeah. Daniel has been speaking in the past tense about Lily and Jack since the first week. That is the giveaway for me. Would capsules or pill coating material survive for a limited amount of time, but not in this instance? Any body tissue is going to be gone by now, unless they are preserved. If they're sealed in a container, and this is such a horrible thought, if they're sealed in a container, that could be a game changer as well. I wouldn't be surprised, though, that their bones are going to have a lot to tell. And I really hope that they're found anyway, regardless. Yeah, when Malaya left, it seemed pretty clear that that was it. My first introduction to this case, Paula was covering it, Plunder True Crime. And I think it was probably the very first video that she did on it, and she played Daniel doing an interview. And it was actually one of those clips that I played at the beginning of this live stream, where he puts on the fake crying, and I knew straight away that the children were gone. And then we start hearing about Malaya having left, and I thought, well, that's it. But Malaya leaving the property, that seals the deal as far as I'm concerned. If you thought your children were just lost in the woods, if you didn't know where your children were, you would not leave that property. Even if there was a bit of a thought that maybe they'd been abducted, you wouldn't leave the property on the off chance that maybe they are lost in the woods. And she never went searching. Yes, they told her to stay at the house on the first day. And I don't know what the instructions were on the second day. But wouldn't you think that for a mother with 2 children missing, that as soon as they were like, yeah, okay, you don't need to stay at the house anymore, that you'd be wanting to get out there and search? Like on day 2, not a year later. That's a good point, Shelley. By the way, he talks about Jack and Bugs. You're wondering if that's what set him off and caused the disappearance. I keep going back to thinking he lost control. I did a video last week where I made a connection that I hadn't made before. In the early news footage, we could see Daniel had taken one of the news crews up to those funny cabin thingies. Hi, Sazza, welcome in. Yeah, one of the really early news stories. Probably the first time any of the media crew were on the property, and Daniel took them up to the cabins up in the woods, and you saw that blue bucket lying on the ground. And at the time, I'd thought, that looks odd because it's a beach bucket. What are you going to do with a beach bucket up in the woods? Because you can't use a plastic shovel to dig into hard ground, especially not in May, up in the woods. And I just kind of was like, well, you know, kids carry things and drop things and leave things around, and I hadn't thought anything more about it until I was listening to Daniel on Charmaine's, and he was talking about how Jack would fill up his bucket with bugs and worms and things, which reminded me of Janie talking about Jack having a salamander in his bucket. So it made me think that we have these references, and I'll go into this in far more depth in that video if you haven't seen it. But there's a lot of things that kind of point towards that location. And that bucket up in the woods. So you could be right. Is it possible that the children were meant to be in the house and Daniel lost the plot? I actually don't think they are outwitting the RCMP. I think they are. But I think the RCMP know a lot more than what we could even imagine. There's so many, and Rob McCammon does refer to it. There's so many investigative avenues that they have. And in terms of technology and stuff, you know, I do think the RCMP have got a lot on these people. Oh, now that's a good point. Little bucket looks new because he got that for Easter at Cindy's when they did their Easter egg hunt. That could well be the case. Just bear with me for a minute. I'm going to have a look for that photo from when they did the Easter egg hunt and see if Jack's holding a bucket in that photo. Unfortunately, when I do it this way, I can't just straight up find the photo like in the single file. But if I go back through all my images for Jack and Lily, which I'm doing right now, by the way, which is why I'm probably talking a little bit stinted, like I'm scrolling through photos, looking to see if I can find the Easter photo. I know Lily's there holding an Easter egg, but I'm not sure if we actually see Jack with anything, and I'm still not down to the photos yet. Where is it? I must be nearly there, I think. Maybe, possibly. I've already got a lot of... I've only had this MacBook for a few months, and I've already got so many photos on here. It is so much easier if I can just go straight to the folder. But that doesn't really happen when you're on StreamYard. But that's a really good point, because Cindy did an Easter egg hunt with them. She also said that she took them to the beach quite a bit. They liked going to the beach. So it could also be... No, damn, no. I've just found the photo, but it's only shows Lily with the Easter egg, doesn't show Jack. Hang on, I'll bring that up anyway since I was talking about it. That's all I've got that I can see, but I will have to go searching. Yeah, it did. Whoops. That picture of the blue bucket, it really did look like it had just been left there. It was clean, it looked new. It didn't look like something that had been discarded and left there for a long time. Yeah. There's not a lot of photos of Jack smiling, but clearly when you listen to Cindy talking about the sort of activities that she did with them when they went to her house, I think that was a haven for these two children when they went there. So, you know, they were blessed, I think, that at least they got access to one of their grandmothers. I'm going to have to go back through photos now, and I have to ask Belinda too if she's seen any Easter photos that might have that bucket in it. Yeah, I might have that photo on hand because I only used it recently. I'll have a look because it really did look like it hadn't. There it is. It just, and I'll pull that out of the way. Now, this is the image from, I'm not sure if this is the image from when Janie did her interview or whether it's from when no, this is from when the media went through. So it just looks like it's been dropped there. It really does look new. And I've had a look at other photos to see if there's any buckets lying around in the yard. There's a large bucket near the chook pen, but it would have been too big for Jack to carry. So it certainly makes me wonder. It's definitely not been lying there through winter. And whatever that is behind it, I mean, that's really bright. So I don't know. But it's certainly, when I heard Daniel talking about Jack putting all these bugs and things in his bucket and just kind of the connection with all the references that keep coming up to these damn cabins, as him and Janie refer to them. There's another picture showing the little shovels and rake in it. I'll have to look for them. I trust that the RCMP did take dogs up to this area when they brought the human remains detection dogs in. But it sucks that they haven't taken this bucket as evidence, and it'll be gone now. I will have another look. I don't have that photo on hand. There's a crack in the bucket. No, that's actually the seam. There does look like there's grass stains on the bottom. So, you know, it's not like brand new, dropped there that day, but it's certainly not been there for a long time. Anyway, that was just something that had me wondering. Now, I do want to get back to talking about this Daniel conversation with Charmaine. But I'm going to go look for some more photos of that bucket now. Now that I know that there is one, and I thought I'd seen one that showed the shovels and the rake in it. And if Jack was using a shovel to pick up centipedes, that would explain a lot. Oh, sorry, I missed someone's question there. Did Meadow go stay with their grandparents for Easter as well? Well, it's my understanding that they didn't actually stay there. They just went there for a visit. My honest opinion is that Daniel probably wasn't allowing Malaya to leave Meadow with Cindy. Yeah, it was still there in July when Janie did the walkthrough. I'll have to put the link for the video. I'm trying to think what it was called. But if you go back through my recent videos, sometime in the last week, I did a video about this where I looked at all the things that point to the possibility of this bucket being significant. And I showed Janie doing her walkthrough. And you can see the bucket there. Yeah, he isolated Malaya, and I think he would have been very controlling in terms of not allowing Baby M, to stay with Cindy, because for him, I do believe that that was the main way of him controlling Malaya. I believe that he weaponized their baby. And when you listen to him, anytime he talks about her, he talks about his daughter. And then a few times he remembers and he corrects himself to our daughter. But in his mind, she's his. So I actually don't think that she would have ever been left with Cindy at any point in time. I suspect that when Cindy saw her, it was a case of, we're here visiting, you get to see the baby, you get to hold the baby for a while, but then, we're taking her with us. Because I know Janie spoke about there were times when Cindy and Wade would pick up the children and take them for the day or something. And I would bet any money that did not include the baby. Now, with this audio from Daniel, I did backtrack a bit over the last bit that I played yesterday. Just because it's a doozy, the stuff that he said. So I thought I'd backtrack, play that, and then go on from there.
1 year. That's why I'm not throwing out theories or speculation at this point, because I just don't know. But I want anyone who has any credible tips or any information to just go even to your local law enforcement attachment, and they'll send it to Major Crimes. And I think that's the best chance we have of finding Lily Jack at this point. And I want, I said that at the end of every interview, and it always got cut out. And I've done a lot of interviews, and I never did those for myself. I always did those for Lily and Jack, and I did those for investigators, so they'd have a chance at finding the kids, because that's what it always is. And I want to appreciate everybody I appreciate everyone who has a big heart, even the people that hate me, because if they hate me, that means they have a big heart and they care about the kids.
Whoops, helps if I unmute. No, I played all that yesterday, but it just sounds so contrived. There's nothing genuine about that. And this whole thing of, every interview I've made that plea. Well, I showed you the interview where the reporter had to remind him. The message still is. Yes, I believe that if she was in that ambulance having a what sounds like a full-blown panic attack, yes, I do think they would have done an assessment of her. That's for sure. Definitely. When I was looking at her handwriting, there were some signs in her handwriting from when she did that statement for please bring me home, that suggested that there was still some issues mental health wise in terms of those sort of ideations, if you get what I mean. Yes, she's definitely involved. That was a strange remark. All of it was a strange remark, really. He comes up with the weirdest things. He's trying to sound genuine. He's trying to sound like he cares. And he's trying to tap into the things that content creators have been saying about, you know, we're here for Jack and Lily, you know, that sort of thing, and calling him and Janie out for just not seeming to give a rat's ass about Jack and Lily. So when he's saying, oh, he doesn't care if people hate him because, you know, that means they have a big heart and they care about the kids. He cares. He just thinks that that's going to convince people that he's a good guy. And it just comes across as so bizarre and so off. It really did not miss the mark. It had the opposite effect, in my opinion. And we know how much it bugs him. Why else would he be coming on here trying to continue to fix the narrative if he didn't care what people thought? He's so transparent, but he thinks that he's just, you know, he thinks he's got it.
That was always the main objective, is finding Lily and Jack. And I want everybody to, you know, take the time out of their day to, especially on today, to think about Lily and Jack.
I'm really good with forgetting to unmute. This was the 2nd of May that he did this, in case you're wondering why he's saying especially today. Clearly, again, he's been listening to content creators, and he's like, oh, this would be a good thing to say. And he's like, I want everyone to take time out of their day, especially on today, to think about Lily and Jack. Well, the people that were watching that live stream were thinking about Lily and Jack at the time. But him saying that, he gave himself away. Because he's basically showing that for him, he's pushed them out of his mind. For him to have to remind people to think of Lily and Jack shows us that he himself doesn't have them on his mind 24/7. So it's not a good statement. Yeah, it is. Them walking around free, it's not just that bugs me, it's the very blatant vibe that they give off of, we got away with this. Because that's the sense I get. You know, Malaya turning up at that search for a photo opportunity. that was all about PR for her. And then going and hiding away again. But you can bet that if that was 6 months earlier, she probably wouldn't have done. Because I think that right now they just think, hey, we're home and hosed because it's a year on. Well, they probably need to look at a few other investigations and see how much time it can take sometimes for arrests to be made. Masterminds. Yeah, sure. They're all geniuses, right? They've got no idea. No idea whatsoever. Okay, I probably should have edited out the next lots of audio because it's just him going, well, thank you, Charmaine, and then it's them coming back into the follow-up interview, but I'll just play that through anyway.
I want to thank you, Charmaine. I want to thank you, Melissa, for giving me the platform and giving me the time to speak my mind and letting people understand who I am, past, present, and future.
Actually, it's probably good that I left that bit in because when I listened to it, he's thanking Charmaine for giving him the time to speak his mind so that people can understand who he is. So even though he's just said, I want everyone to think about Lily and Jack today, even though he said, I do this for Lily and Jack, when he says thank you to Charmaine, and when you thank someone, that's saying, thank you for doing this because this is why I wanted to do it. So when he says, thank you for giving me the time to speak my mind and let people understand who I am, with no mention of Lily and Jack, he's just shown us his own motivation. Yeah, send me the tips and I'll send them to RCMP. Sure. Send me the tips. And if there's any that aren't going to dump me in it, I'll send them to RCMP. Welcome in, Little Black Bear. Good to see you. YouTube's not doing notifications of my videos and live streams at the moment. Some people are getting them, but a lot of people aren't. I'm seeing some of my videos when I drop them out there. It's like YouTube doesn't even tell people that they're up. I've had some where it's taken a little while for it to show any views at all, which is a little bit alarming. And I will say on that note, if everyone can hit the like button, because that definitely does help me get these seen by other people, and then it will get YouTube once again, hopefully putting out notifications. Yeah, they've so far evaded justice, so they think they're safe from more scrutiny. Daniel does sound really chilled. I know he came out because in response to Malaya, but I do think that there's a bit of confidence here as well. We got this whole Mr. Nice Guy act happening, and I think he believes that people believe this crap that's coming out of his mouth. I think he probably thought 1 year on, we're home and hosed now. I know I've got these other charges coming against me, but people are so busy talking about Malaya, I need to come out now and just remind people that I'm the good guy. They've all got a big surprise coming their way because there's no way that RCMP could not have a really good case already. And I think they're just being patient. These people aren't going anywhere. In terms of getting a conviction, patience is always a good thing. We just have to look at the Barry Morphew case where they jumped in way too early the first time around, and that was a dicey position to actually get to court and suddenly realise that they were going to lose the case, and to actually have to ask the judge to dismiss it without prejudice. Because if the judge had just dismissed it or just gone, yep, okay, overturned, if they had not done it without prejudice, then it could have destroyed any chances down the track of prosecuting Barry. Now they've got him right where they want him, and I don't think he's getting out of it. But I know there's cases, there was a case in the news recently where they were talking about someone who had been arrested over a death somewhere, and somehow, I'm not sure if it went to trial or not, but somehow it got the charges ended up going away, and now they haven't got a chance against this person even though they've got more evidence. I haven't seen Shannon in a while. I hope she's doing okay because I know she's been struggling with some health issues. So, yeah, I haven't seen her in quite some time. So I hope she's okay. It's certainly been a while. Yeah, he heard Lily scream, but the helicopters drowned out the sound. Like, give me a break. Yeah, honestly. The stories he comes up with, you could actually put together a video and market it as a drinking game of every time he says something really dumb. Although probably not a good idea because it could be a very dangerous video. Yeah, Daniel thinks he's got everyone conned. Yeah. He is literally the last person to have seen Lily, by his own admission. Sure, we have Janie claiming to have heard the children. We have Malaya claiming to have heard the children. But Daniel says he saw Lily popping her head in and out of the room. He heard Jack rustling around in the kitchen. And he thinks people are going to give him tips. Sure. I mean, they just seem to keep forgetting the fact that the RCMP have essentially locked in that property in terms of what happened to those children. They've made it really, really clear that the children, they believe, are deceased. They've made it really clear the children were not abducted. And they've made it pretty clear that the children did not wander off into the woods. When you listen to everything that is said by the RCMP, it all comes back to something happening on that property. And there were 3 people on that property. And yet, every single one of them thinks that we believe that they know nothing. Yeah, I think most people would end up totally hammered with a Daniel drinking game if we had a video of just all the dumb things he said. Because, yeah, true, he never says anything that isn't dumb. I was absolutely gobsmacked when I was editing that big long live stream that he did with Sunny, because some of the insane things that he said, I was like, is this guy for real? I hadn't caught the extended version of his drone story, that they were following him at Jordan's place even. Like, seriously. Oh, look, him and Janie, they're the gift that keeps on giving. I think after his next court date, I don't think we're going to hear from him again. Unless, of course, Malaya comes out and starts speaking. And then he's going to have to come out and try and control the narrative again. But they just keep coming out to try and fix where they've made mistakes before. But what they don't realise, and I probably shouldn't say this because we really don't want to give them tips, but then they've been getting tips all along. When they come out to try and fix something that they've said, they just make it worse. The next court date is, someone said at the start of this live stream, I think it's about 13 days away now. So it's, yeah, Dodie, it is July 7th. Thanks for that. We're getting really close. Hopefully it will be more than just them turning up and setting another date. His lawyer did say that he was going to either elect or plea, or both if he elects for staying in the provincial court. But I'm not holding my breath. Jordan is July 13th. Thank you. I was actually wondering that last night, because I get the court lists now, and I go through them and have a look and see if there's anyone there that we know. And I was wondering because I'd forgotten when Jordan's next mention is. I think Jordan's might take a while to get moving as well. I hope we get Daniel electing and pleading in this next court hearing, because it's so frustrating, all these cases. It's the same with the Phoebe Bishop case. That's just going nowhere. And that's been in court since August. And I know Australian courts are really, really slow. But it seems like Canadian courts seem to be not much faster than Australian courts, in my opinion. So, yeah, roll on July 7th. Yeah, if he makes a plea, then they set a date. Now, the way it will happen is he has to elect first. So, at the moment, it's still in the provincial court. And what he has to do before he can enter any plea is elect whether he wants it to stay in the provincial court or whether he wants it to go up to the, I'm just going to say Supreme Court because I get it confused every time. And then people give me 20 million versions and I get even more confused. But he has to elect. So he has to elect if he wants to stay in the provincial court or go up to the Supreme Court. If he elects to go up to the Supreme Court, he won't enter a plea, because the plea has to be entered in the court that's going to be hearing the case. So if he elects for going up to the Supreme Court, then a date will be set and it would be like a mention again where he then has to enter a plea. If he's going to stay in the provincial court, then he will enter a plea at the same time. Will he even have to appear? If he's entering a plea, he has to appear. If the lawyer is just going for another extension, then he doesn't have to appear. But I would say that even if they want to delay it again, it's going to be the last chance to delay it. I would imagine a judge is going to go, enough. Because most judges reach a point where they say, okay, we've already adjourned it this many times. The next time, you got to be ready to go. Definitely way too late. I really hope that we get some movement on the 7th of July. Because I'm just so sick of all these cases that just take forever to move. And I do believe that Lily and Jack's case hinges on what happens with this case. Not in terms of they're still going to go after the people who are responsible. Hi, Princess Pillow, welcome in. There's still going to be justice for Lily and Jack, in my opinion. But I do believe that part of the delay is waiting to see how this one goes through. Because this would be useful in terms of prosecuting a case if they are presenting an argument that something violent happened to Lily and Jack. It would be establishing a past history, essentially. Yeah, it does sound like Canadian courts are just like Australian courts, just really, really slow, which is just insane. I like that whole speedy trial thing they have in America. And I do know that there are laws in place in terms of if someone is charged, and this is in Canada and Australia, if someone is charged and it does take a really long time to get to, I think, to the actual phase of the trial, then I think there are things that in place that could actually mean that it gets overturned. But at the same time, I don't think we're going to see that. It's all about appearance. It's all about appearance. They're so desperate to just convince people that they're innocent. They never come out and plead for Lily and Jack. It's always been, look at us, we did nothing wrong. Look the other way. And they're being a bit more subtle in terms of both sides have tried to convince people the other side is responsible. But I'm guessing that there's been some sort of repercussions for that, because even Daniel's being cautious now. You know who doesn't really care about appearances when a child is missing? Innocent people. Exactly. Thank you, Charlotte. Yeah, I knew it was something like that. I had read it several weeks ago. It was one of those things, my brain took it in and then went, yeah, okay, we'll try and remember that, and then I forgot. Yeah. Nothing will get dismissed. Can you imagine the public outcry if anything connected to the people connected to this case got dismissed? It's just not going to happen. Okay, a little bit more of this audio.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, I would like to thank you guys for yesterday. That was, I haven't spoke out in quite a few months, so it was, different for me to start doing that again, and much different than doing your classic interviews that would be on CBC or CTV or, Global. So it was really refreshing. And as you said, I reached out to you, and I wanted to do that for Jack and Lily because I knew there wasn't going to be many people that speak out. Belinda always speaks out, and I appreciate her for that. And she's always been, since the start, one of the only ones that took the time to speak out and raise awareness. And I wish.
It makes me sick when he says this stuff about Belinda, like he's not involved. So he's just so glad that she speaks out because, she's the only person and it raises awareness. 3 Happy Meals and send all 3 to jail. Exactly. I knew there wouldn't be many people to speak out. Yeah, in other words, he's glad that Malaya's staying silent. He's glad that her family's staying silent. That's what's behind those words, in my opinion. Okay, I have to quickly take one of the dogs outside. So let's have a little bit of Daniel stuff for a moment.
Build a fence so tall, the cars are parked and watching me, they speed away. When I step out the door, they take my pics and videos galore. Drones are buzzing high above my place, yet none appear online to show their face. No one sees my mom making the ground, just silent lights without a sound. Up in the sky, lights of every color shining bright. They flock to watch me every night, hoping for a glimpse or a fight. I run so fast they can't keep up. They chase me through the wasted slush every night.
Okay, and that's probably not going to be the first dog break because only one wanted to go out. Maybe they'll sleep through. Mouse is really good now at waiting for me to finish my live streams before he decides he wants to go out. The old dog, she just can't wait. And, you know, I can't begrudge her that because she's 13 now, I think. I wonder how it feels to be so uniquely wrong. He thought no one would care, and anyone who cared would be afraid to talk. Yeah. I think none of them expected the sort of attention that this case has gotten. And I think part of the reason why he keeps doing this whole, I'm so thankful for Belinda. Because when you think about it, a lot of the reason why the case is still getting so much attention is because of Belinda. So I think really what he's thinking when he's saying that he's thankful for Belinda is that he wishes Belinda hadn't come out because it's keeping awareness going. So that whole thing of someone trying to act sincere, act like they're so grateful to someone, when in fact they're hiding their resentment, but they don't hide it very well. Definitely, people are still talking because of Daniel and Janie. I think even with Belinda speaking out, things would have slowed down to a halt. But thankfully, Daniel and Janie have given us so much material to keep this case out there and keep the awareness going. But definitely in terms of him and this whole, I'm so grateful for Belinda. He's not. Because he doesn't want anyone to continue talking about Lily and Jack. We've heard him so many times it might have been the interview after the dogs, when he said this should have all been over by now. Yes, Belinda did stop Daniel from controlling the narrative. Not only did Belinda stop Daniel from controlling the narrative, but until Belinda came out and started speaking, he had control over the people that were speaking about Lily and Jack, or not speaking about Lily and Jack, I should say. Because until Belinda came out, he had complete control over the situation. Because Malaya was staying silent. Nobody in Malaya's family was talking. So he had full control of the narrative. And he cannot control Belinda. This is someone who is here for Lily and Jack. Charlotte, you said it, you typed it just as I was saying it by the looks of it. Belinda's here for Lily and Jack. Belinda is a very good critical thinker. So she hears all the different stories, all the BS that's being put out there, and she applies logic and critical thinking, and she's not afraid to turn around and say, essentially, that's BS. You were trying to say the same, but the chat wasn't letting you. Yeah, Belinda's very smart. Belinda sees through all the BS, And that's a threat for Daniel. Because he's shown us that for him, the number one thing is control. He has no control over Belinda. He has no control over Chelsea. He's doing his best, in my opinion, in these last couple of live streams to get control over Cody, just in case Cody might suddenly decide to speak out. Now, Cody, if he's got his mother's brain, is not going to come out and speak because he would become a target straight away. But Daniel wants to ensure that that's not happening. So he just throws in these little jibes here and there about Cody to try and make sure that Cody does stay silent. Just to maintain that control. Yeah, I think it was in this conversation with Charmaine where he said that he didn't feel that they were communicating with him anymore or something like that. There's been a lot of things that he's said that shows that he's quite frustrated that he's not getting the communication that he had with the RCMP before. Because I think that he truly believed when he was helping the RCMP, I think he truly believed that he was controlling the investigation and directing the investigation in the wherever he wanted it to go. So for him not talking with RCMP is going to be doing his head in because he likes to know what they know. Yeah. You are so spot on. Belinda is his most dangerous opponent. He does not like Belinda at all because he cannot control her. Likewise, from day one, you could tell that he sees Cindy as a threat. Because if you remember, one of the messages that he gave to Sunny was him claiming that he believed that Cindy was a psychopath. He feels threatened. He's glad that Cindy's not talking because I get the impression Cindy's a pretty strong person as well. So he's glad that Malaya's family's not talking. He's come out strong in these live streams to try and make sure that he shuts Malaya up again. Hence the comment about weaponising. But when it comes to Belinda, he's got nothing. There's no way he can control Belinda at all, and it pisses him off. I don't think anyone is as strong as what Belinda is. She's lasted right through this with all the drain, the emotional stress and everything, even with some idiot content creators suddenly coming out and attacking her. And I think he's suddenly realising that he really can't control her and he can't shut her down. That's why we're hearing these comments from him. Yes, he's far more aggressive with Cindy because she took Malaya and the baby. He saw Cindy as a threat from the beginning because when he took Malaya to Gairloch Road and he isolated her from the rest of her friends and her family, he could not cut Cindy out of the equation, which basically elevates her to the number one threat. When he's talking about Malaya talking to Cindy on the phone every day, you know there's resentment in that. So, yes, Cindy, he's very aggressive towards her because he knows that she can control Malaya. She's the override switch, I guess you could say, when it comes to Malaya. Yeah. Cindy, I mean, the fact that Cindy sat in the ambulance with Malaya when she was having that panic attack and then took Malaya away with his baby, that makes her public enemy number one for him. So he's going to do everything he can to discredit her. Yes, it really must make him so angry that Cindy took Malaya and the baby after he worked so hard to isolate her from her family, especially that Cindy took the baby as well. Because obviously in his mind it wasn't meant to happen that way. Yeah, him asking what they were talking about 5 times a day, that really was, I found it annoying too, but it was gaslighting. It was like, because he's tried so hard to create this image, first of all, of Malaya not liking Cindy and them not getting along at all, that just, completely overturns this. But he was gaslighting her in terms of, like, what could they possibly have to say? Because, it's not like they're that close or anything. Yeah. I'll just see if there's anything else. Yes. You might have noticed in this discussion with Charmaine, he kept having to correct himself when he spoke about the baby because he kept speaking about his daughter. And then he would correct himself and say, our daughter. Yes, Cindy could well be a witness for upcoming cases, potentially. Probably shouldn't go down that, but yep. Yes, now, thanks for pointing that out, because usually I do make that point. I've said this in the past, and the way I've phrased it is essentially, Malaya was a victim in her relationship with Daniel. But when it comes to the children going missing, she's not a victim, and she is a part of it. She is responsible as well. She may not have done anything to her children, but she also did not remove them from an unsafe environment. But what we're hearing from Daniel, it does make it so much easier to get a really clear picture of what was going on in that house and get a clearer picture of him. Yeah. This is something that I did a video on because, hang on, I just need a sip of my drink. Here I am speaking and I forgot to unmute the mic. Yes, Malaya has had a year to tell the truth. And yes, the word he used was weaponized. If Malaya speaks, I'm going to weaponize what she says. Going back to Logan, I did a video on this quite some time ago where I went through the audio from Durwood and I looked at the audio from Daniel, and I also looked at things that have been said by Logan. Now, I have no doubt whatsoever that Scam Nita was not present when Malaya did a runner with the baby. It's not possible because she swears black and blue that she was at Cindy's place on the Sunday after the children went missing. We know that she definitely wasn't there for 6 weeks, meaning she definitely was not there when Malaya left with the baby and went to the reserve. So none of her stories about that are worth paying attention to. And I'm quite certain of that. So when we break down what was said by Daniel and what was said by Durwood and what was said by Logan, and Daniel and Durwood inadvertently showed that each other's stories were kind of accurate. Because I believe what happened is they set Malaya up. One of them made a slip about Malaya being unsupervised. I think Daniel said that. Daniel said that someone had contacted him and let him know that Malaya was unsupervised. He claims he rang her and she was already in the vehicle. But you have this story from Durwood, and I can't remember if he slipped out the unsupervised thing as well at one point or not, but he basically said that he was at Paddy's, he was making sure someone overheard him, and that he used that person overhearing him to trigger Malaya to do a runner, essentially. I believe that, yeah, Daniel said Durwood told him she was unsupervised. Thanks, Charlotte. I believe the plan was to find out that Malaya was unsupervised. Then Durwood contacted Daniel, said, now's your chance. I believe Daniel probably contacted Malaya. I think Durwood probably slipped something in front of Hayden along the lines of telling Paddy that Daniel was going to go out to see Malaya or something like that. I do believe that whatever it was he said made Hayden think he needed to ring Malaya and warn her about Daniel, about someone. And the only thing I can think of is the only reason she would have done that would be for the sake of the baby. And I think the only reason she would do it would be because she believed Daniel was going to take the baby. So I believe the idea was to set her up, make her think Daniel was on the way. Then Daniel rang her just to seal the deal. And they thought that what they were going to achieve with that was that CPS would take the baby and Logan would get custody. You hear Daniel claiming that when he realised Malaya was on the run, he rang RCMP and they said, that's not our job, ring CPS. He claims that he rang them and he couldn't get through. And then he claims that it was Cindy who reported her. But when you listen to their stories, Cindy wasn't around to report her. So I believe that it was him who rang CPS. I think they set her up deliberately. I think Daniel then rang CPS and said Malaya's in breach of the agreement. Yes, he used his aunt's phone to call her, so she wouldn't recognise the number. So they set her up to breach the agreement with CPS. And then Daniel reported her, and he thought that Logan was going to step in and get custody of the baby, and it backfired. So that's, I think, part of the reason why he's now so resentful of Malaya for losing custody of the baby, because it didn't go to plan. Yes, I do believe it was coordinated. I think there were several people who worked on that whole thing. I think definitely Durwood. I think Logan was involved. And by Durwood's own admission, I think he intentionally used Hayden without Hayden knowing he was being used. Yes, well, we've learnt that Daniel has anger issues. We've learnt that he has issues with rugs. If Lily and Jack are not here because of Daniel, then yes, Malaya could have been afraid for the safety of the baby. That is such a good point. Because if she's seen him go into a rage and something has happened to Lily and Jack, then she was probably, up until the moment that Cindy put her in the car and got her away from there, she was probably afraid of something happening to the baby. And it's probably an anxiety that she's probably living with today. I've heard that the baby is being cared for on the reserve, which would have to come as some reassurance for Malaya in terms of him not being allowed on the reserve. But we hear Janie talking about how the whole time that Malaya was there before she left, that, you know, she pretty much had a hold of Meadow the whole time. You know, Meadow was attached to her hip. Meadow was with her when Janie went into the house, and all Malaya's family were there. So I would imagine that there's probably was and still is a lot of anxiety for Malaya over the safety of the baby. Yes. Well, he's only allowed supervised visits with the baby, which usually says that there's a good reason for that. But, you know, I said this yesterday. When you have these kind of relationships, it could have gone either way. When we hear about, you know, what was going on in that household, it could have ended up being Malaya that was missing, not Lily and Jack. Or it could have ended up being all three that were missing. I think had it not been Lily and Jack at that time, it could have been Malaya at another time. I have said about that before, but and I know that sounds really heavy, but we're talking about someone who has dependence issues in terms of, and we're not talking just weed. We're talking things that do affect someone's temper. And we're talking about someone who is a master of coercive control. Someone who has anger issues. So potentially, it really could have been more than just Lily and Jack. It's a disturbing thought. Yeah. If given the situation, he was quite likely spiraling. And it would not be beyond the realms of possibility that had she not left with Cindy, she could have been next. Yeah. I do think Janie is afraid of him. That look on her face when she did that interview, that look of utter horror when she's talking about that she didn't think Daniel did anything. I believe that Janie either saw, the look of horror you can't read that any other way. Janie either saw the aftermath of what happened to Lily and Jack, or she saw what happened. Yeah, that's it. When she was saying, I don't believe my son had anything to do with this. That look on her face. That was pure horror, pure terror. I think no parent wants to believe that their child is capable of becoming so violent that it ends into children going missing. I agree, Charlotte. She's essentially, when she talks about, I hear everything in my RV and, what goes on down there in the trailer is none of my business. She's essentially admitted that she knew things weren't good. And I don't think she expected that they were going to end the way they did. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. She talks about hearing Daniel yelling, and it was 10 minutes before she went out. And she says she blames herself for not checking on the kids or whatever. If he was in an absolute rage, I wouldn't blame her for locking herself in the RV until everything went quiet. Yeah. Janie would not say it was none of her business if it was something positive. Yes. All her language points to her being aware that things weren't good down in the house. I think there's definitely resentment from Janie and Daniel over Malaya calling 911. But I think that's because they really hoped to just make it all go away. I think Janie truly believes it when she said that Malaya could have just said that she'd given the children to someone. They'd gone to live with a distant uncle or something. And that 8:30 phone call from Malaya, or 8:38, trying to ring Cindy, that bugs me. Yeah, that statement also bugged me a lot when she said that she had to drag Jack through the woods. I do. When I did a video about a week or so back as well that was untangling the timeline, when I just took Friday morning out of the picture completely and I looked at all the statements and put them into a sequence. And I can't help thinking that when Janie talks about, she heard Daniel yelling, She came outside 10 minutes later when it was quiet. Malaya was standing there, and she headed up into the woods to the cabins, even though she's in other parts of her discussion said the children would never go up there. To me, that is her suggesting that Daniel, that's where he went, and she was running up there to see what had happened. Because then she talks about seeing Daniel up at the top of the hill. You don't hear that part anymore. I wonder if the one that I've got, that that I've kept, let me see. I'm not sure if I've got that video on my MacBook, but the Janie interview, I've actually got that like permanently saved. I do. I'm going to play through that. I don't know how long ago I saved this, because if they've edited that bit out, that would be interesting. But let's watch Janie's interview right through again. Maybe. What's going on? Oh,
This is the patio door
that Jack and Lily would have.
that Jack and Lily came out of.
So it's the morning of May 2nd. Take me through what happened.
Okay, I was up at 6 o'clock, sat in there and had my tea. And then on Facebook, 7 o'clock, I get up, come over here, fed my chickens. My brother, Ron, called me at 8:48 and asked me if I wanted to go to town with him. And I said no. I said I'm staying home.
okay, at least now it flashes up in front of me and tells me the mic is muted. Yeah, that gesturing to the mic guy is a little bit amusing. Yes, she has quite a limp there. She talks about taking them for walks through the wood. It doesn't seem likely. Yes, you can only see the rooster there. There is a clip, a news clip, or I think it's a news clip from around the time the children went missing, and you can see chickens in there as well. Because that was one thing that I questioned after I saw this interview. Why are we only seeing a rooster? But if you go back over the news footage from the early days, you do see chickens in there. The chickens are probably in the shed, maybe. Janie's timeline and Malaya's timeline keep colliding. You've got all this stuff happening at 6. Durwood claimed that Janie was on the phone to her brother at 6. Now, we've never heard anything about that from Janie, so I'm just going to put that aside for now. But Malaya tried to ring Cindy at 8:38, and Janie was on the phone to her brother at 8:48. Is that correct? Like only 10 minutes later? There's all these overlaps, and I'm curious about why. Yes, I think a lot of us were quite shocked by how angry she came across when we first saw this interview. Yeah, we'll have to keep playing so we can get to the bit where she's talking about going through the woods.
I'm going back to bed. Okay, I went and I laid down. Next thing you know, my dog started barking, and the kids were out in the yard. Now, you can see there's 2 swings where the kids play. My bedroom is right there. I heard the kids. This is where the kids' swings are. This is where they always played.
And so that's where
That's where I heard them. And I can hear everything in that trailer. If 2 kids get out of a fence, and Jack and Lily are all the time yelling, especially Lily, come on, Jackie, let's go, Jackie, let's go, Jackie. It's all I hear out here. When the kids get out of the fence and come out through here, I would have heard them yelling, come on, Jackie, let's go, Jackie, let's go. I didn't hear anything. The next thing I heard is I heard Daniel yelling. He was yelling for Jack and Lily. I didn't get up because I thought he was yelling for Jack and Lily in the house.
I do question the fact that those swings look very new. And duct tape does not last for long outside. You can, however, when you look at the aerial footage from CBC from around the 16th of May, you can see swings. But yeah, it's curious. I didn't hear anything. The next thing I heard was Daniel yelling. I hadn't thought about it that way. I don't think Jack was submissive to Lily. I think probably what the situation was that Lily probably mothered him a little bit. I think Janie saying, come on, Jackie, let's go, I actually think that was more about Lily when Jack was not doing the right thing and Lily trying to get him out of trouble. Like if they were going somewhere where they shouldn't possibly be. So I think more it was about Lily kind of mothering him and trying to keep them out of trouble. Good to see you here, Joyous. That little cubby up on the embankment, no one's ever spoken about that. It looks really iffy. Really does. The wood under the swings, I did a video about that a really long time ago too. And that was a misunderstanding. Because the first footage we see of the property, that wood is at the front of the property, near the vehicles. And the first footage, the first aerial footage we have of the property comes from CBC. And there's no woodpile under the swings then. So the woodpile was actually moved after the children went missing. It's just something that everyone jumped on board so much that it's just become accepted as fact when it's actually not. Yeah. Definitely. 6-year-old girl does feel like she's a big sister. Don't forget too that we've heard from a few people that Lily did a lot of modelled behaviour. So when they were still seeing Belinda, she had to have the same like glasses as Belinda, and she had the gardening hat like Belinda. And Belinda spoke about how she had to, because she was vaping and she couldn't vape around the children because Lily wanted to pretend she was vaping as well. So when we think about Lily, there's this modelled behaviour. So it seems that it would have been natural for her to take on a mothering role with Jack, because that's what she's learnt from the people around her. Well, I can't keep up with chat, but just reading through this. Yes, you do see the bucket in this video. Yeah, definitely. Daniel's older kids would have got way more use out of those swings than Lily and Jack. But it's pretty clear Janie didn't like Lily and Jack.
The next thing you know, I came out of the trailer after I heard Daniel, about, I'd say, 10 minutes after I heard him, I come out of the trailer. I opened up the door, was standing here. Malaya was standing right here with Meadow on her hip. And I come out and I said, "What's up?" She said, "Jack and Lily are missing."
Just something I noticed here, which I noticed it before, but I hadn't twigged to the significance of it. This whole time she's talking about coming out, Malaya's standing there with the baby on her hip. I don't know why Durwood was there. That's a really good question. But the whole time she's telling this part of the narrative, she keeps looking up the hill to the cabin area, which again seems to point to something happening up there. Because she's the whole time, instead of, you would expect, if she's retelling this narrative, you would expect her to be focusing on the location where Malaya had been standing. But she's not focusing on the location where Malaya has been standing. The whole time she's talking about Malaya being there and Malaya saying the children are missing, she keeps looking up the hill. The next thing you know, I came out of the trailer. Yeah, definitely some weird language.
How long? She said, "About 20 minutes." I closed the door, got my boots on.
She's
came
still
out
doing
here,
it.
Ran up in the woods. Just right up here. The kids have a little fort that they made out of sticks and fir branches. And that's where they go. You can see them and hear them. We went for walks in the woods. I had to practically carry Jack through the woods because there was no way that he was walking through all that.
If you go back in the video, she was going to say, standing right there, where she was in changes, it seems like she caught herself. Let's go back a little bit. I do want to have a look again at the way she's talking about Malaya and looking up the hill the whole time. Yeah, the next thing you know, missing time periods. So true.
Right here with Meadow on her hip. And I come out and I said, "What's up?" She said, "Jack and Lily are missing." I said, "How long?" She said, "About 20 minutes." I closed the door, got my boots on, came out here, ran up in the woods. Just right up here. The kids have a little fort that they made out of sticks and fir.
She also stumbles before she says fort. The kids have a little fort, which shouldn't be a place where you stumble in the sentence.
And that's where they go. You can see them and hear them. We went for walks in the woods. I had to practically carry Jack through the woods because there was no way that he was walking through all that.
Aha. Now I can see the rake and the little shovel. So this is in July. This was about 6 weeks in. So that bucket's at the very least been sitting there for 6 weeks. So it does look a bit faded there. But it looked a lot fresher in the earlier videos. It does bother me, this bucket. It bothers me a lot. I think in terms of those branches, when you look at the news footage, when Daniel took them up here, took news crews up here in the first week, then all the branches look pretty fresh. Someone said that that was made during the Easter holiday when Daniel's kids were visiting. So I'm not sure. But I do think this area is important somehow.
Falls and bushes. I did this whole area. There's an old road up back. When I got up to the top of the hill, I met Daniel. And I said to him, I said, did you find them? He said, no. He said, you coming with me? I said, no. I said, I'm going to search this area. Because when she told me the kids were missing, you automatically think they went into the woods. That was my first instinct.
But she says you automatically think they went into the woods, but then she tells us they wouldn't go into the woods. Yeah, that's what I've heard too, that Daniel's kids were there over Easter, and I think it's been speculated it was made then, because it would take a few weeks for those branches to start dying off. But it is curious when you see how dead it is 6 weeks later. Well, Daniel claims he didn't have his phone either. Apparently, Janie and Daniel both ran off looking for the children without their phones. That's the biggest contradiction ever. I had to carry Jack through the woods. Well, the moment I heard they were missing, first thing I thought was they went up in the woods. Oh, the children would never go up into the woods unless they went up there with my grandchildren. Oh, they wouldn't go into the woods because Lily didn't like bugs. Yeah, the language is just odd.
So I went up and I did this whole area, this whole wooded area, right up to the top of the dirt road, came back down here and came back down the side of the road, came back down here and came back up the same spot. I went back into the house. By the time the cops were here, I don't know exactly what time, I didn't take my phone. The cops were here. There was a bench sitting here, or a sawhorse, it's over there, was sitting here. I was sitting on it, bawling my eyes out. I was crying because I blame myself for not getting up that morning to see the kids. Because if I would have got up, this wouldn't have never happened. Okay? That's why I was crying.
We've heard a lot about the patio door.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's go see that.
Sure.
So this is the patio
This is the patio door
that Jack and Lily would have.
that Jack and Lily came out of.
I would imagine when you see that look of horror on her face, I would imagine that she has to believe this. Because if she were to actually focus on what really happened, I think it would do her head in my opinion. I think something, when you see that look on her face, there was something quite traumatic that occurred.
And so tell us why we've heard about the patio door.
Because everybody's saying on Facebook, on YouTube, on TikTok that the patio door makes a noise, and why they didn't hear the door open. The bed.
Oh, I went straight past that part. Yeah, when she says I blame myself, you see real emotion there. You totally do. It's unmistakable, in my opinion.
Back there. Okay?
That far window.
The
there.
last window is the bedroom.
And so they would have come out this door.
They would have come out this
that
door.
morning.
Yes.
And then they went and played on the swing set.
Yes.
And that's when you heard them.
That's when I heard them. Right here in this area here. I plan on putting a pool up this year for the kids.
Yes, some WD-40 on the tracks would make them more quiet. I showed it before, but when Ali pulls the door shut, as it latches, you can see her shoulder lift a bit, meaning that it took a bit of weight to close that door. It's actually dropped on the runners a bit. And yeah, now lying about the pool. Has anyone seen that, what I believe is an AI image that's out there now, showing Lily standing in front of the fridge wearing a white top, and in the hallway, so it wouldn't actually be in that location, someone's thrown in a picture of a pool in a box. To me, it is so very much an AI image. I asked Belinda if she knew where it came from, and she said it came from, she saw it posted by someone on Facebook. But yeah, I'm convinced it's AI. There's a number of reasons why, and I will maybe do a short video on it. But again, it seems to be there's a few AI images popping up now of the children, and it really pisses me off.
Need level ground for a pool. That's what I was doing. I was leveling out the ground to set up a pool.
Sure,
This
Janie.
is the Thursday.
This is Thursday.
Right.
Friday, all the investigators, search and rescue and everything. Right around here was where they found the only footprint.
This is where the boot.
This is where I was raking that night. That's where the boot print was found. In the mud where I was raking.
I thought there was two boot prints.
There was supposed to be a footprint found away up on the pipeline.
Right.
Malaya sent me the picture of it. That's all I know. There was a footprint found.
Okay. Okay.
The reason Ali asked there, I thought there were two. She wasn't referring to the boot prints on the pipeline. You may remember that in those early days, Daniel was telling people that there were two boot prints found on the driveway. And that's why there's the confusion there. Yeah, why only one footprint if it was muddy? Yeah, I always love seeing more Aussies in here. I'm guessing either Bonza didn't get my text message or she's busy, because usually she's in here. But yeah, I think, I don't know how many times I've looked at this interview, but I think Janie gives a lot of things away.
I'm telling you, the footprint was here. The only one that they can confirm that was Lily and Jack's was right here.
So it was child size.
Yes, a man, one of the investigators came in here and was measuring it all. I'm not here to lie. The reason why I wanted you guys to come here and do the interview here is to show you exactly where everything took place. And to show people that this is what happened.
To show people that this is what happened. She's basically gone from her RV to the driveway, up into the woods. No, she's not the grandmother. She is the mother of the ex-partner. So Daniel's mother. So no relation to Lily and Jack whatsoever, but she was living on the property. Yeah. I'm showing you where everything took place, and she is. She's given us a guided tour of the crime scenes, in my opinion. I think that's what makes this whole interview so crucial, but also a little bit disturbing.
All the stuff that people, all the rumors and accusations about us murdering the kids and burying them on the property, this place has been searched thoroughly. The well has been checked, the septic tank, all the barns were searched. My RV was searched 3 times. The trailer was searched. This whole place was searched. If they want to come back and search again, they're more than welcome.
You've talked about...
Yeah, she's gone step by step. And that's, again, it brings these little cabin thingies in the wood, the fort or whatever you want to call it. There are a few things that have been changed between when the children went missing and when this interview was done. Yeah, why does she? Especially, this is early days. This is when Janie did this interview, the theory that people were running with was that it was some sort of accident and a cover-up. But Janie has jumped straight to talking about the M word.
Drones flying over your property. You've
Yes.
talked about cars driving down the road and
Yes.
slowing down. What's that
July.
like?
Cool.
I'm scared to go out sometimes in my own property. I mostly stay around back here. And if I do go out front for anything, I usually have my head down because I don't want people to see who I am. That is me myself. It's not because I'm hiding from anybody. I don't like to be on camera. I don't like my picture taken. I'm just a quiet person that just wants to be left alone, and I mind my own business.
She's a quiet person. But if I ever am working on a video and I haven't started talking yet and I listen to any audio from Janie, straight off it sends my dogs off. So she's not all that quiet. I'm going to have to run it back when we get to the end, aren't I? Because we missed the bit about dragging Jack through the woods, did we? Or was it not in there?
I'm just a hermit.
Do you feel as if the finger has been pointed towards you and Daniel?
Yes, I do. Because I live on the property. Come on.
Do you think your son had anything to do with the disappearance of Jack and Lily?
No, I don't believe Daniel had anything to do with the disappearance of Jack and Lily. Our heart don't lie, and my heart is telling me that my kid did not have nothing to do with this, and I had nothing to do with this.
Right there. That look on her face. My son had nothing to do with this, and I had nothing to do with this. That is pure horror. Pure horror. It could also be, the dragging comment could be in one of the Facebook audios. I'm going to have to, after I get off this live stream, I'm going to go and check. It could just be in the Facebook audio. But honestly, that is not the face of someone who believes her son had nothing to do with it. That is a look of horror. She said carry in this video, not drag. It must be in the Facebook audio, so I'll look for that and I'll do another separate video after this. We see emotion in her twice in this interview. The first one is when she says, I blame myself. And this is the second time. Whatever she is seeing there in her mind scares the bejesus out of her. Yeah, I definitely remember her mentioning dragging Jack through the woods. Probably in the Facebook audio. I can go through the transcripts and find it after this. Yeah, quite likely a flashback, that's for sure. Quite likely. Where it all happened, and the investigators talk about a fundamental wrong. I think she blames herself because she heard she was outside, allegedly raking, but we know that's not the case. She was apparently outside fencing. It sounds like she went inside on that Thursday night, left the kids outside unsupervised. And I believe that probably maybe Daniel and Malaya believed that they were out there with Janie still supervising them. When we hear her talk about hearing Daniel yelling, we hear Daniel, Malaya and her all talk about it going suddenly quiet. I believe that she blames herself for going inside and leaving the children out there unsupervised, and also for hearing Daniel yelling and not going out. That's why I think she blames herself. I think she thinks that maybe had she sent the children inside when she went inside, or had she gone outside when she heard Daniel yelling, maybe she thinks she could have stopped it. Oh, heck yeah, I would love to know where those dogs hit. Sounds like there were a few locations on the property where those dogs hit. They definitely alerted outside on the property. The RCMP were very careful with their wording when they talked about the dogs, and they said that they did not find any human remains, but they never actually said the dogs didn't alert. But you have one dog handler asking Daniel about the stove. You have Janie talking about all the dogs, they were just, they're running around the property, and if they stopped, the handler would go over to them, and then they'd go again. So Janie basically told us that the dogs alerted somewhere on the property, various locations on the property. In this interview, she said she had to practically carry Jack through the woods. Must be in the other audio. I'll go find it afterwards. From what Janie has said, it really does sound like the dog's alerted. And also from the way RCMP in their press release were talking, sounds to me like they did alert. I did a members only video straight after Rob McCammon did that interview, where I pointed out to members that the wording of it did sound like they were being careful about not mentioning that dogs had alerted on the property. And then we had, later on, Janie came out with this statement of the dogs. She basically described the way a dog alerts. She's talking about them running around and then they stop and then the handler goes over to them. Yeah, he did ask if he could pet the dogs. That was a strange thing from Daniel, but Daniel says a lot of strange things. Definitely. Well, she talks about her fridge being like, they could come and her grandkids could just go and get what they wanted out of her fridge. And it was very clear that it was her grandkids that could do that, not Lily and Jack. Well, Daniel claims that he asked to pet the dog. I wouldn't be surprised if he did, as a way in terms of trying to find out what the dog handlers knew. Because they were already on the property when he got there. They turned up with the dogs while he was at his visit with the baby, which was definitely intentional. So I would imagine that he went over and he probably did ask to pet the dog because he wanted to know what they'd been doing when he wasn't there. Because I think that Janie must have driven him, because he made some sort of comment too in relation to Janie meant to be driving him or something, meant to be taking him somewhere. Yes. Must have done his head in not being there when the dogs arrived. And I'm certain they did it that way. I am very certain they did it that way. Yeah, I think they hit on the wood stove. Based on what Janie has said, I do believe there were a few places outside where the dogs also alerted. And so it's not only that, but they switched the dogs around. So they had one dog cover the property while the other dog did out on the pipeline. And then they switched them around and brought the other dog onto the property. Now, had that dog not alerted to anything on the property, yes, they may have brought the other dog in just to double check. But then to bring both dogs back, they were thoroughly going over that property. That was not an instance of the dogs not alerting. They definitely alerted. Yeah, the reason I brought you guys here, yeah. Well, we've seen some of those interviews with Daniel where he was not on the property. So that's a good point. Maybe they did want to meet her somewhere else first. Could be afraid to leave the property. It was a red flag. Definitely was. I mean, I believe her and Daniel when they say the children aren't on the property because they're so adamant about it. And we know the property's been thoroughly checked. But are they concerned also that there may be evidence that has been overlooked and they don't want anyone coming on the property with them not there? Yeah, a fundamental wrong. It's not, that's not something, not a good thing. It is, yeah, unnatural and deeply disturbing. No, Michelle's Australian, like me, another Aussie. Okay, we'll just finish this. I think that's the main part of it, but we might as well let Janie finish what she's saying.
You know, if something bad happens, you get like your heart drops. Mine hasn't dropped. Deep down in my heart, I do believe Jack and Lily are alive. It's not because of what people are saying. It's my heart tells me that they are alive.
I don't think her heart does tell her that they're alive at all. And even just the wording there is odd. It's, my heart tells me. It's not the way you would normally say it, in my opinion. Yeah. Janie has either witnessed the aftermath of what happened to Lily and Jack or she's seen it firsthand. And I think it is something that haunts her. That look of horror on her face, you can't mistake that as anything else. Yeah, the fundamental wrong, that is definitely a huge statement that certainly points to something not good happening to these children. The heart don't lie. It's such an odd thing to say in that terminology. It's, yeah, she's trying to convince them that she believes that Jack and Lily are alive. Because she in her mind, she needs them to still be alive. Because that erases what happened. She can block that out of her mind. Well, that's the thing. Either it implies they don't think it was accidental, or it implies that whatever was done after something accidentally happened was a fundamental wrong. Yeah. She wants to block it out. Definitely cognitive dissonance. She needs to believe that the children are alive, because otherwise it brings back the horror. So I think she's been trying very, very hard to convince herself that the children are alive, to block out what really happened, in my opinion. Yeah. Yeah, and that was, some of that stuff on the vodka show was just a little bit disturbing, wasn't it? I think I might go and do a video where I look at some of what was said here and some of what was said on the Vodka Man's show. because I think you can see how it's affected her over the past 12 months. But I think Janie has witnessed something that she is desperately wanting to block out. I think it's not just about convincing everyone else, and I think she is trying to convince everyone, but I think Janie is desperately trying to convince herself that none of it happened. I think she does dearly wish that the children could be found, because even though she knows they're not going to be, she desperately wishes they could be found, because that would erase what actually happened. I've tried a few times to make a song, an AI song about Vodka Man, and I've not liked any of the versions that I've ended up with. I will try again at some point. But yeah, they've been epic fails. Yeah, she talks about carrying Jack through the woods, and she talks about dragging Jack through the woods, which, again, did something happen up at those cabins and Jack brought Lily back down and she brought Jack back down? Just speculation. Yeah. I think she heard all the yelling and stuff. I think she was aware of Daniel yelling at the children a lot. And no mother would ever think that their child would be capable of ending the lives of children. No mother would want to think that. I mean, you just have to look at cases like Maddie Soto, Brian Laundrie, where the mothers are just doing everything in their power to protect them because they don't want to believe anything bad of their children. So, but she gives herself away. It's pretty clear. When you listen to what Janie says and when you look at her face, when you see when she gets emotional, it certainly makes it all point back towards Daniel. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there because it is already getting on for 2.5 hours. And I'm surprised that Mouse hasn't decided he needs to go outside yet. No doubt that will come next. Yeah, that sort of stuff can really screw people up. And despite what Daniel says, no, it doesn't work the same way as ADHD medication does. Not at all. Yep, okay. I think I need to wrap it up. So I've loved the discussion today. I know we've really not touched on any of the Charmaine stuff, but I thought the discussion has been absolutely fantastic. I've really enjoyed seeing people's perspectives and everything. If you are listening in from Australia, I'm hoping to do a live stream after dinner tonight on an Australian case, if I get myself organised enough. I will try and give people like half an hour's notice if I do. Anyway, thanks for coming in, people. Loved everybody's contributions, and I'll catch you in the next one.
to run to.